Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Right, yeah, we'll probably just change and evolve as we go. Yeah, some of it we can probably, like, get through, we don't really need to do, SB5 'cause that's done, we're going to mention that already, and that's kind of the topic. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's fine. It's like, oh yeah, we have the championship coming up this weekend. For anyone interested in season 6, it's starting next week, and the deck lists are due soon. We currently have a L going on. I don't know if carousel or triple threat are even going, so we could just. Um, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that right at the end, and then that could even lead into the questions too. Just be like, hey, we got these spoilers. What are our thoughts on it? Other people's thoughts. Uh, just AIL. Yeah, we'll put it there. I had Christians on here, but I could not remember what his deck was, so I just axed that. I could probably get rid of Matt's too, just so we can talk about our decks. Go through that quicker. Hmm. Yeah, I think that'll go well. Cool. Oh yeah, so you have to like type around it. How's my audio coming in just through these headphones here? All right, perfect. Cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the First Five podcast, First Five Live. I'm your host, Chaos Theory, also known as Jeremy, and I'm joined by Phil, aka Phillycheaz.
How's it going, guys?
What's up, everyone? So, this is a new thing. We're still kind of working out the kinks here and figuring out how to do it. We already ran into a few technical issues right before we started, but we got them. I think we got them sorted out. So, yeah, I guess we'll kind of get into it. I'm really excited. Um, okay, so we'll just talk about like why we're doing this, I guess, real quick, and the format of the show. So, I mean, the main motivator here is we both just love talking about Ashes, and with the
Pretty
main
much.
action podcast kind of taking a break again, we wanted to kind of just jump in and fill the missing slot, right?
Yeah, Christian, Matt, and I were just like struggling, just trying to sort out our times and everything. So we had to take a break with that. But I knew you really wanted to get into podcasting and everything, so I reached out to you so we could get this working. And I had reached out to you right at the holiday, so then I was like, oh, more scheduling conflicts. But new year, now we can start getting things underway. So
Yeah,
happy to be here.
yeah, for sure. So, our plans are to shoot the podcast live whenever it happens. I'm not sure what our cadence is going to be quite yet. We're still figuring that out, but we'll shoot it live on YouTube. That way we can have some interaction with chat and make it sort of a more, I don't know, improvisational environment. And then we will strip the audio from the video later and upload it for people who are interested in listening only. If you're not into YouTube and you want to listen on your favorite podcast player or whatever, we'll try and get that to you in audio format. So, with that out of the way, I mean, I guess for people who are new to the game or not part of the community, why don't we talk a little bit about us real quick? Not too much, but Phil, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm Phillycheaz on the Discord. I try to be active on there a lot. I've done really well in a lot of the tournaments. Um, um, yeah, I don't know. I've gone undefeated in three of them, and it's felt good, but just adds pressure. But
Right.
it's fun. It's I never expected that to happen, so it's just been fun trying new decks and seeing how well they've worked.
Yeah. I would say you become a bit of the people's champ in a lot of ways because you just demolish the Swiss rounds and you've been making it further and further every top cut and just haven't quite made that win yet. So we're all rooting
Still
for you.
just out of my grasp still, so we'll see.
The competition's really tight. It's tough. So
Hmm.
if you don't know me, this is my YouTube channel. I'm Jeremy, also Chaos Theory on the Discord, and I make content for this game. I'm occasionally okay at it. I have made one top eight, and I'll be playing in the Shuffle Bus Championship coming up next weekend, which we'll talk about in a bit. But mostly, I'm not super competitive with the game. I just like playing it and talking about it and trying new ideas. I'm really big on trying to play off meta stuff and make use of cards that don't really see a lot of play. So that doesn't get me very far in tournaments. But yeah, I mean that's us. Um, I guess we'll kind of the format here we're going for. We'll have a quick intro every time, and then we'll do some news. We'll talk a little bit about what we've been playing, some recent decks we've been playing, and then we'll go into our main topic, which for this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened in the last season of Shuffle Bus, um, a little bit about the current competitive meta, and then we're also going to do like a overview slash review of Lulu and Orrick now that they are officially out. So yeah, you
Yeah.
want to get into some news?
Sure, yeah. So we have the Shuffle Bus Championship this weekend. That's going to be pretty exciting. Everyone who got a top 8 in previous Shuffle Bus tournaments were extended that invitation for that. I think only 12 people are signed up for it, but it should still be some really tough competition for that.
Mm-hmm.
We also have season 6 of Shuffle Bus. They're calling it the Winter Qualifier because I think they're doing 4 different tournaments each year now,
Yeah.
and that's going to be starting next week. So that's going to be really exciting, getting uh,
Mm-hmm.
more tournaments in.
Yeah. And right now, currently running, we have the Ashes International League, which is our first closed list format tournament happening. And I'm participating in that, and it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of a breath of fresh air after so much open list with Shuffle Bus. They're both great, and maybe a little bit of preview for later, but we're going to talk about open list versus closed list in like a future episode and talk about like the kind of nitty gritty ins and outs of like what makes those different in Ashes. But um, yeah, so there's a lot of competitive stuff going on right now. I think we've also had events like the carousel, draft tournaments, triple threat. There's a whole bunch of different events happening in Ashes at any given moment. So if you're new to Ashes and you don't know where to start, you can hit up the Ashes Discord and ask around. And there's lots of different ways to play competitively, both in a like laid back kind of way and also in a you know super highly competitive environment. But right now, I think it's just the SB stuff and Ashes International League going at the moment. But yeah, there's lots of cool stuff happening.
Hmm. And you recently hosted Jank Fest too, right? How did that go?
Yeah, Jankfest was awesome. So my good friend Jason and I did that right here on my YouTube channel. If you missed it, it's in the archives. So if you want to watch it, just check out my channel. It'll be on there to watch. Um, it was basically just a big celebration of having fun in Ashes and the people in the community that make awesome decks and that aren't always the most competitive things, but are just like really fun and thematic. And uh, it was a blast. Like we didn't really intend to make a big thing of it. I guess it just kind of happened. It was spontaneous and ended up being really really fun. So
Nice.
yeah, it was a blast. And I think our winner of like the deck builder of the year award was Red King. If you've been
No
on
surprise there.
Yeah, no surprises. If you've been on ashes.live at all, um, at the home page for like the decks, you've probably seen like 6 or 7 of his at a time. That guy pumps out more decks than I can even imagine trying to build. And they're all really fun and interesting. And so if you haven't checked out anything from him, go to ashes.live and check out his lists. They're really cool.
Yeah, if you ever have a card that you think is not that great, you should ask him. He's probably got 10 lists all set up revolving around that card. It's
Yep.
like, I don't know how he does it.
Yep. And he was doing his own podcast stuff too for a little while there. I don't think he's still doing it right now, but there is that um, old episode of that if you want to check it out. It's on the Discord as well. But last bit of news is that Lulu and Orrick are officially here. It's been a little while. It's not new news, but uh, you know, the first big expansion has arrived. There's new cards in the meta, and we're all really excited about it. We also have some spoilers for the next pack that were released, and we'll talk about those a little bit later in the episode. So,
Yeah. So do we want to dive into the AIL and what we've recently been playing then?
yeah, let's go for it.
Awesome. So for the AIL, I've had a ton of fun with it since we were just able to play different decks. My first one, I just messed around with a really heavy aggro Brennan. It just dumped two knights round one, and then a Lightbringer, Salamander Monk, and just dumped a ton of damage into them round one. It was funny because I was also playing against a Jessa who did about the same thing, just like with different cards, but was also
Mm-hmm.
aggressive. And it came down to like, if I didn't win that turn, they won their next turn because of how tight on damage we were.
Oh
So
man,
it was fun.
crazy. Yeah, super fast.
Oh
Was
yeah.
I don't know about you, but for me, like seeing Brennan in like the Swiss rounds of a tournament is maybe one of the scariest things in the world.
Yeah, if you're not ready for it, Brennan's gonna burn you down real quick.
Yeah, and sometimes just the when the art like RNG isn't a huge thing in Ashes. There's not a ton of variance, but when it hits, it hits. And if you have a bad round two lined up and Brennan can just burn burn the crap out of you, then yeah, you can just melt pretty quick. Yeah, for AIL, I've been bouncing forth back and forth between two deck lists. And when the format was first announced, when they said they were doing closed lists, I was very excited. And the fact that you could change lists between weeks was really cool for me because I've had one really successful shuffle bus season with Jessa, but the other two shuffle bus seasons that I've played in have been pretty rough, and I realized pretty early on in the season that I had made some critical deck building errors with both of those lists, and I just really wanted to make just a few small changes that would make a huge difference. But I couldn't do it because your list is locked in. So when they said Ashes International League was gonna be a closed list and you could switch lists between games, I was like, yes, this is awesome. And I've basically been using it as a testing ground for uh, future shuffle bus lists. So I've been bouncing back and forth between a mid-rangey Rin deck that has Nature, Ceremonial, Divine, which are my three favorite. That's my that's my favorite three color combo. And a splash of Sympathy and or what? No, I changed it. Splash of Charm and Illusion for Gilder and for False Demon, which are two amazing books. Um, so it's a five color deck, but really those two dice are just there for those two cards. And so far it's done pretty well. Uh, I did, as per tradition, I I got matched up with Matt Bowers in round one. That's happened to me three times now. Uh, and yeah, he always wins. I've never beat the guy.
That makes me think of in 1.0 and all of the tournaments I played, Christian, Pratt, and I, we always got paired round one of all tournaments. It's like it's not
Yeah,
no. I guess that torch has been passed on to you and Matt to always have to play against each other.
yeah. At first it kind of bummed me out because I'm like, man, there's no way I'm winning, and I so far I haven't. But one really cool thing about Matt is that he is really good about like kind of coaching you after a game and like being the post game conversations are great, and uh he's a really nice guy and great sport. And every
Mhm.
single time I've lost to him, I know, or played him in general, because he's such a high caliber player. Every time I've played him, I've gotten better. Um, he's taught me things just by playing against him, which is really cool. And I almost had him this time. I think I did better against him this time than I have any other game. But yeah, he still beat me in round one. But I'm 3-1 now, so I've won my last three games. One of those with the same Rin deck. And then the other deck I've been playing is like a Herald list that, I mean, it's going to be public knowledge because the list is going to be put up for AIL, but I still kind of trying to keep it a little bit under wraps for Shuffle Bus Championship because that's what I'm bringing. But you know, just pretend like I'm gonna make a ton of changes and not gonna play with the exact same thing I just played with.
Yeah, de-
uh,
definitely not going to be exactly what you have
yeah,
played,
no,
but
it'll be super different. Uh, but no, it's like a divine. It's the same color spread I used for Noah in SB5. It's Divine Illusion Sympathy, which is a very potent dice spread in my opinion. It has lots of good value and control tools and tempo stuff. It reminds me a lot of, well, I don't play a ton of Magic, but it reminds me of like a like a Simic Flash deck would do almost, and like playing stuff on other people's turns and yeah, it's fun. Um,
yeah, it's interesting because I played a Herald list for round three, and it's a Charm, Divine Sympathy, and it looks very different from yours because mine's more like control focused, with
mhm,
like owls and cobras to mill them, uh,
mhm.
whereas yours was just like take taking over the board and just like swarming.
Yeah, it's it's very control swarm with big tempo plays, and it's been a lot of fun. So we'll see how it pans out. Also, real quick, I know there's people in the chat, and you're talking. I'm really happy to see you guys here. Thanks for showing up. We may not interact with chat a whole bunch for like the first half of the show, but later we're gonna do a Q&A segment, and we'll do some more chat interaction then. But just wanted you guys to know we see you, and we're not ignoring you, at least not for the entire show.
We're not trying to ignore you.
Right. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. Yeah. Do you want to move on to the main topics?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So we
Um,
got two main topics here. We've got SB5 recap, kind of talk about like what the meta has been and what we might expect it to look like in SB6, and then we've got Lulu and Orrick. So I'll let you kind of take it away with whichever one you want to do first.
yeah, we'll just do a quick recap of SB5. Maone won again. Kale Phelps. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. I probably did.
I think it's Kyla. I think it's Kyla. I'm not sure.
I'm
Anyway,
sorry. You can yell at us later for that.
yeah, we
Uh,
might both have it wrong.
yeah, he took Maone and just crushed the competition. Snakes
Hmm.
seem to win every odd season, so he kept that tradition alive.
Yep.
I tried to give him a good fight in the finals, but my Aerodel could not survive against it. I did feel really proud of the list that I ran. I got another undefeated in Swiss, and then my only loss was in that finals there. So I worked a
Oh,
lot on that my Airdo list to get there, and I just had a lot of good feedback from it throughout the whole tournament too.
yeah, that's crazy. So I guess it's safe to say, I think we talk about a lot about how the meta in Ashes is, it's always fluctuating and it feels like it could change at any given moment. But I think now that we've had um, enough events over the course of the last year, we have seen some common themes. And one of those common themes is Mayoni is solid. Like she does one trick, it's a one trick pony kind of thing, but what she does is really, really good. So, like, how do you fight a Mayoni deck in the current meta?
That's that's something I'd have to figure out too, because that's where a majority of my losses have come to, just losing to snakes. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think it is interesting that Mayone's a known threat that, like you said, just does that one thing, but then no one's figured out how to readily combat that process.
Right.
Um, he didn't go. He lost in Swiss, so we'd have to ask his opponent that beat him there to see what we can do to beat Meoni.
Yeah. Uh, so did you consider like any weird tech pieces when you were, cause, or did you think Meoni was gonna be in a serious, like a big threat for you in the finals again, or in the top cut again?
Meoni was definitely a concern. I saw his list on the other side of the bracket and kind of just hoped he wouldn't make it there. Uh, and unfortunately, that didn't happen because I knew Meoni was going to be a tough matchup for me. I didn't um, build around Meoni too much when I was building my deck, so that was on me. My deck suffered because of that, but I mean that's what happens.
Mhm.
You can't build around everything.
Yeah, that's true. Even in an open list format in a game where you can pick your first five cards, you still can't quite cover every base.
Right.
uh, so yeah, if what I'm understanding is correct, the key to beating Mayoni is don't match up with her. Avoid her at all costs.
Try to avoid. I think like good ways to beat her just like you got to take out the snake every round because eventually they'll have their golden veils to just protect the snake.
Mhm.
Um, in my match, I like didn't draw any removal round two, so I wasn't able to deal with. I didn't deal with the snake from the first round, so then I had to take out that one, and then I couldn't deal with the second snake. In
Mhm.
round three, I drew all my removal, but the snake was too big by then, and he got his hypno swing in. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I just need to have ways that you can continually deal with the snake round over round. And I think that's why everyone likes to go to Herald for um, taking out the snake because Herald has that mark prey to every round. They'll have that removal that they can make sure they attack and take out the snake.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no one. I mean, Harold is really good regardless. I think he's the other kind of big consistent meta threat we've seen. Uh, and he kind of he can go a lot of different directions. Unlike Mayoni, she's kind of just stuck doing one thing. Harold can kind of be all over the place, but the consistent thing is that he can consistently remove big threats like
Hmm.
all the time. So I guess Harold is a good pick if you are afraid of Mayoni. Um, but yeah, uh, so we saw Mayoni win again. Um, we your Aerodel deck was doing something different from what Aerodel did before, in that you were running Ruby Cobra, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. But Ruby Cobra, you want to talk about what that brings to the list? And
Yeah, so in the previous iteration with four book Aerodel, it was more of just like a swing deck, and um it wasn't really targeting against units because it had Frostback Bear, Mindfall Gal, and Salamander Monk, and I just used Frostback Bear and Salamander Monk to help the Mindfall Gal get in through damage, so I wasn't attacking units. I was just attacking face just to um, get in that damage that way.
mm-hmm,
But for my build this time around, I wanted to use Ruby Cobra, and with it with that in mind, I decided to make it more of a mill deck. So I slotted in Three-Eyed Owl as well, and I still had Mindfall Gal in there, so I had five ready spells.
mm-hmm.
But I really built around the mill game plan, so it was funny seeing everyone's reactions to it, thinking it was still like a swing deck, but I went into every match just like, no, I'm going to try to mill you, and I think 50% of my decks I ended up milling them, so it
Wow.
it was really strong in that regard.
Yeah, that's crazy. And were you using any gates thrown open or like ways to refresh the book, or was that just one Ruby Cobra per round?
Yeah, it was just one Cobra per round, and if they stick around, it can just add up because
Mhm.
it's one damage if it's not blocked, and then it's one card milled for each time, and then if it sticks around, then it's 2 in the next round, and then 3 after that, so it can just really add up really fast, and then
Mm-hmm.
with the three-eyed owl also being there to do a couple more cards each round, it just takes out a lot of their cards. I also had Chain of Violinist and Return to Soil in there to
Mm-hmm.
help even more get ahead on that mill game plan.
Yeah. That's crazy that like we've seen dedicated mill decks that haven't milled as well as this kind of thing. uh Ruby Cobra is a powerhouse. Um
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I think Carl Diaz, he had said for a while that he thought Aerodel was like the best mill Phoenix Born, and I love playing Aerodel. I was like, okay, with Ruby Cobra, we're going to be doing mill there, so we'll see
Mhm.
if I can make what Carl said truth there. It's like,
Yeah.
and it did really well.
Yeah, for sure. Um yeah, I for SB5 I brought Noah and I did the dice spread that I talked about earlier, that divine sympathy illusion. And I kind of wanted to go for like a 4 book Noah, which I hadn't really seen a whole lot of. I didn't see a lot of people doing that with Noah. Um, but he's got a big battlefield and he's got 4 spellboard slots. Um, and I thought, I figured one of my predictions for SB5 was that 4 book was going to be a dominant archetype, whether it's Aerodel or Lulu or whatever. And I think it was very popular. But I wanted to do a 4 book list in Noah because Noah could essentially make your opponent's 4 book a 3 book list with his shadow target. And it was a good plan. I think I had tested the list originally in an in-person tournament in Kansas City, which was a closed list, and it did better there. I don't think I adapted the list to an open list format very well. Um, I also I made a mistake on a deck building level of just I didn't think about secondary win conditions, and I didn't have any burn in the list at all, and no mill. So it was all swing. I just had to get all my damage in through swinging. And every game that I lost was pretty close. The big problem that I ran into every single time is that I would run out of gas. Like I'd get to the end, I'd have them within, you know, 4 or 5 damage maybe of losing, and suddenly they just start clawing back the board and like they start picking apart my board and taking out my big swingers, and then I can't get in, and yeah, I would just they would come back and win against me. I didn't have a way to close. Um, and so I I went 2-4, and I think you know that's I think if I had constructed my deck a little bit better and given myself more reach, I could have done a lot better. I think I would have at least gone 3-3, if not made it to a top cut. Um, but it just goes to show, like you have to, you know, you have to consider deck building really closely in this game, and you have to think about um, your win condition a lot. You have to really hone in on it, and also in an open list format, you really have to plan for the types of things you think you're going to see and making sure you have the tools to fight them and be flexible. My deck was not very flexible. It had like one first 5 option, and that was basically it. Um, so yeah, I would like to do like a sort of a deeper dive into that at some point and talk about like where my list went wrong and what I would do to fix it. I just haven't gotten there yet, but it was a fun
Yeah,
tournament though.
Noah is always an interesting one to me. I haven't explored him too much, because I'm always worried that I can't exploit his ability too much, and then
Mm-hmm.
with wanting to run the wolf, I'm not sure like how I can use that effectively the best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from the sounds of it, it does seem like just since like you didn't have any burn or some other reach to get you there, that is
Mm-hmm.
could be like why your list struggled. Because that's always a concern for me. It's like um if you can get a big board and you're swinging, but if they just wall up and they're like taking all their hits, you can't get any through.
Yeah.
Or if like they're not destroying your units, then you make a big swing, you might get just a few damage in, and then you can't do anything because your board's filled up.
Yep.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it would be interesting to explore that and see
Yeah. The
what more can be done with it.
the big, I think it could still be very strong.
Mhm,
What I'm doing in Herald is essentially sort of a take on what I was doing in SB5, just in a different Phoenix Born package. And the things that Herald brings to the table that this deck didn't have was I could deal with large units pretty easily. One thing I really struggled with in Noah was killing knights. Um,
mhm,
because in those colors, you don't really have good knight removal. You have like steady gaze, and you have, I mean, I mean, you have steady gaze and seeds of aggression maybe, but it's hard. Um, Herald deals with that, but more importantly, started slotting sympathy pains into these lists, and that made a huge difference. You wouldn't think that it does, but just that extra 2 to 4 damage that goes over whatever they have on the board makes it a massive difference. So,
yeah, for sure.
um, but yeah, so we had that, and it was our first meta with Lulu and Orrick involved, but we're still, I mean, Lulu and Orrick is still pretty new. Lulu didn't get a whole lot of play. Oric did, but no one really knew how to play him the right way. We were all trying to figure it out. So you want to talk about Lulu and Oric a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Like you said, there's a lot of orcs that were involved in the tournament, but I think no one's really figured out how he wants to be played yet. I tinkered around with him in AIL too, and um, didn't do the best with him. So yeah, there's still a lot that needs to be done. I think uh, a lot of people though are realizing how good Ancestor Spirit can be with Orc because it just helps
Mm-hmm.
you draw and then cycle your cards. Because one thing I noticed early in testing was if I'm just drawing a bunch of cards, I don't want to just discard them if I don't get the concentration. So Ancestor Spirit
Mm-hmm.
getting helping you cycle and put them on the bottom so that you don't have to discard them really helps you keep your deck count keep your deck count high and then
Mm-hmm.
just keep getting towards those concentrations that you want.
Yeah. And one of the big downsides for me in playing Ancestor Spirit has always been that power side cost. But
Hmm.
Orc doesn't really care about power side cost much because he's so good at meditating and fixing dice.
Yeah, Oric makes it easy and you don't have to worry about meditating at all. His
Mm-hmm.
ability and then the concentrations mean like you can get you can run 7 colors effectively and still like
Mm-hmm.
run cards that require power sides and make it work.
Yeah, it's crazy. I haven't played a ton of Oric games, but every one that I've played, I've like there's been frequently turns where I don't even draw at the top of round because I drew so much during the round.
Right.
During the last round, that I just have a handful of cards, and like it'll be like round two, end of round two, into round three, and I have like 2 cards in my discard pile. It's crazy. Um, yeah, he's really good at. He's like got that anti-mill package in there, and he naturally wants to play towards the long game. So he, I think, Oric has a lot of potential as a uh, an anti-control deck or an anti-mill control deck. Um, but the key thing that we haven't been able to figure out yet is how to balance uh, awakened state, like in having to pay for concentration every round. Um, you certainly get your dice, your value. Um,
Hmm.
I think the it's easy to look at concentration and think that you're just sinking your dice into something that doesn't do a lot, but really, if you think about it, every die you spend on concentration is it's a card draw, a dice fix, a damage to PB, and a damage to a unit. So that's 4 things of value you get for 1 die, which is tremendous value. It's just that the damage part of it is backloaded. Um, and so you have to find a way to deal with only getting half your value out of these dice for most of the game. Uh, and that's tricky because you're not actually controlling the board until later with concentration. So
Yeah, you have to find some way to survive while playing on effectively like less dice each round while your opponent is getting to use all of their dice. So yeah, it just makes it a really hard puzzle to try to solve.
yeah, I think being able to get um being able to make trades up as far as dice goes, like if you ping fester a knight, you're up one die. I think that's probably one way that Orc can fight that and stay at parity with resources. But we're still that's only one kind of way to do it, and still trying to figure out.
Yeah,
It's hard. He's a tricky one. Um, yeah. So big cards out of Oric. I think that we saw. I think we talked about Ruby Cobra. Ruby Cobra is insane.
I
Um,
think that's definitely the card that's like w- well and ahead, like the top card from this release. It's just like a
mhm,
powerhouse. Like it's one of the best new conjurations. Um, and it just does really well
yeah.
with
Uh,
what it has.
like uh, most 0-2 units, um, zero attack, two health. They they do something of value, but they're not super valuable as bodies. Um, but Ruby Cobra is because it becomes a 1-2, which means it can trade with like, Raptor Herder or whatever. It can pick off a hatchling. It can pressure your guard. Um, but it also, like what you were saying, you deal 1 point of damage and you mill one. Milling one isn't super impactful during the game, but it does slowly eat away at your opponent's like secondary health resource. Like
Right.
your deck is partially your health and it's partially your fuel for like what you're trying to do throughout the game. You only have so many meditates um, before you start eating away at your own life. And so Ruby Cobra is, if you think about it that way, Ruby Cobra is almost like a 2-2 for one, which is crazy.
That's how I felt like it too. Like if it swings in and hits the Phoenixborn for that one damage, and it gets the mill too, so it's like later on it's going to get that extra damage in from the mill.
Yeah.
I think
So,
its only liability is like it can be swung at and not really be able to counter since it has zero attack, but like that just
mhm,
requires like playing around it so you're not in that position when playing it. I thought that would be a liability with it, like a huge liability going into this last season, but it was really easy to know when I can play it and when not to play it, so it didn't get
mhm,
just attacked immediately.
yeah. Well, do you think that people maybe didn't respect it enough in general and early on in the season? Like it was still new and people didn't realize how good it was, or
I think so. Like at least with my list, since I was running Owl and Ruby Cobra, like everyone targeted the Owl because the Owl is a known threat. No one
hmm
wants to have their cards getting taken care of. But like with Ruby Cobra, you- it's not taking cards out of your hand, but like we said, it's effectively doing double duty. It's getting a card like the Owl does, and then doing a damage to you. So,
yeah,
to me, like at the end of it, it's like you gotta be targeting the Cobra over the Owl there.
right. Yeah. So definitely Ruby Cobra a big deal in these packs. I don't know how much we saw of generosity in the tournament, but I really like the card. I think it has a lot of potential. Um, like what do you think about generosity in the current meta?
That's a card that I was like not really too high on at the beginning because it just seemed like I wouldn't want to be giving my opponent any of the other options. Um, but
Hmm
whenever I've had it played against me too, I've also felt like they're just getting so much value out of it. So it's an
Yeah,
interesting like thought process there of seeing like when you want to play it to get the most value there.
Sure.
I think some of the best values are just like if you're trying to get cards right at the beginning of a round, you can just play it and draw 3 cards. At the beginning of the game, no one's taken any damage or you exhausted anything, so it's just 3 cards for 1 die, and that's really good value there.
Right.
Um, I think other good places to use it could be like with James, because
Yeah.
James can get an ally out, and then you can heal, draw, or unexhaust with James. Like you get value out
Hmm.
of all 3 of those right away. So
Yeah. Yeah. That seems really
yeah.
good. Uh, One card I thought I was a little disappointed by uh was Ash Spirit. I think we when we first saw Ash Spirit, um, it was everyone immediately thought, "Oh my gosh, knights are just dead. Like no one's gonna play knights anymore." But it turns out like it it doesn't do a whole lot. Like it doesn't do anything offensively like Ruby Cobra does. And your opponents don't have to attack into it. Like they don't have to attack Phoenix Spawn until they kill it some other way. Um, and so a lot of times it can kind of just sit there, and it also draws your opponent a card. Um, so I'm still kind of on the. I'm like on the fence, but I'm like hanging off the fence by one leg towards the side of it being not good.
Yeah, it's a card that like when it was shown to me, like I want it to be good, but in practice it seems like the opponent can play around it too much and they can even use it to like self clear when they want to. So it
Yeah.
can just work really against you there. The draw can be good, it can not be good. And it also seems like its end game effect of dealing a damage when a deck is empty. It's not a May ability, so sometimes you get decked before your opponent, so then you end up
Mm,
taking those damages before them if their deck's not out. So
yeah,
it's a tough card to use so far.
for sure. I do think one card that was is massively underrated from Orrick that didn't see a ton of play and probably should is Sunshield Sentry. Um, I'm a yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
I did not start off as a big fan of this card, but I've been playing it a lot lately, and I think it's very, very good. Um,
Yeah, it can really help like deter like big swings.
mhm.
Uh,
and
I
and even targeted
Yeah,
swings, it's still a 5 health to attack, so it can trade up with like some smaller units and stuff. Like it can put the damage on the bear, like block the bear, put the damage on it, and then open it up to pinging, and you still have a 3 health alert blocker sitting there. Like, yeah,
yeah. If you don't have removal for it, it's going to stick around for possibly the whole game.
yep, and it's got to recover, doesn't it? Yeah,
Oh yeah.
recover one. Yeah, so
Yeah, it's probably not looked at too much because it's not an aggro card, but
mhm,
for if you're running a defensive deck, definitely slot that in because it'll help a lot.
right. Yeah, I think if there is an Auric deck out there that's gonna be strong, I really think Sentinel Sentry is gonna be a big part of it. It's gonna be like a cornerstone unit for that deck, I think.
One card
Uh,
I was surprised I didn't see too much of was Fate Reflection. Um,
mm-hmm.
Everyone was like saying that was going to be like the best card out of the set when it was released, but I just I I just haven't seen too much of it in my plays.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
So I have thoughts on Fate Reflection. um, One thing about this Noah list that I did change between the Kansas City tournament and Shuffle Bus was I swapped out all 3 copies of Particle Shield for 3 copies of Fate Reflection because I thought, you know, if I'm gonna kill knights or bigger units or bears or whatever, this is gonna do a good job. Like it's gonna it's going to block a crescendo and then send it right back and blow something up. And that's going to be the way that I'm going to get these huge value uh, trades against bigger units. Um, it turns out that power cost reactions are tricky. They're really tricky because you have to meditate beforehand, um, and have it ready to go. And when you're already like I didn't run any dice fixing in my list. I tend not to run dice fixing. I'm coming around to the idea that I need to start running more dice fixing, but um, especially with Ruby Cobra in the mix now. But I was just finding that like I'm having to meditate a lot already. I don't want to meditate more for this, but I have to meditate ahead of time to set it up, and you telegraph it too. Um, so it has a lot of inherent downsides, and sometimes when someone hits you, sometimes someone just hits you for one. You know, you have a wounded, you know, false demon on the board or something. Someone pings you for one. You don't want to use a fate reflection to block one damage and send it back at a bear that has full health or something like that, or a
Yeah, it
knight
doesn't
or a
really
knight.
feel worth it in that case, huh?
No, and I personally I found every single time that I had an opportunity to play fate reflection, I wished it was a particle shield, like every time. And I remember talking to Jesse actually at the Kansas City tournament, and I told him like I'm not entirely sure whether or not I'm gonna play Fate Reflection. I might want to keep my particle shields. And he's like, dude, you play Fate Reflection every time. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think I might come to regret it, and I totally did. So I think we all kind of overrated that card a bit. It's still probably really good. It's just it's competing for a lot in that color, those
Mhm.
colors to like with a lot of different reactions. And I think particle shields generally more like general use. So
Yeah, I think Particle Shield is something like it's a really good card just for like trades and like really messing with the math that your opponent is
mhm.
looking at for when they're taking out their units. I remember in like 1.0 it was a basic, so I had it in every deck because it just like messed things up. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't had a chance to use it too much in Reborn because I just haven't used Illusion much, but it's
Yeah.
definitely a card I want slotted in all my Illusion decks because it'll just really like mess up opponents' plans, I feel like.
Well, and it works in combat too, which is another
Yeah.
thing. Fate Reflection only works on spells or abilities, dice powers. Um,
Hmm.
Fate Reflection can like when someone's already committed a swing to an attack, and you like deny them the kill, draw a card, and then you can swing back at their exhausted unit. Like that's really really strong.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I agree. I think Fate Reflection was kind of it's still potentially good. It just was a little bit uh misevaluated, I guess. I think Fighting Spirit is a card that I expected to see all over the place, and we didn't really see it a ton.
Yeah, it seems like just a card that it needs to be like built around, so you need like a lot of status tokens flying everywhere to make it work. Um, but I guess no one really wanted to like try that too much in this season. It might have like fell too far into like the uh, jankier kind of builds for more people to want to use.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it has a lot of untapped potential. I think of all the cards in Lulu's deck, Fighting Spirit is one of them. Is the one that to me it has like just an absolutely crazy ceiling on it. It can.
Yeah.
I've seen decks that just like throughout the game slowly build up these tokens, and suddenly when you run out of blockers, literally any threat your opponent puts on the board can swing for 7. And it's like what do you do against that? Like
Right.
it's crazy. And by killing the threats, you're putting status tokens back on Fighting Spirit again. It gets kind of wild. I know
Yeah,
it. Oh, go ahead.
I think just as more of the time cycle comes out, so then we'll have more like status token units and effects that Fighting Spirit will really find its own with like a set of units that it can like really work well with.
For sure. I'm sending a message to chat real quick.
Okay.
We will have a Q&A session coming up very shortly. Until then, we're because I'm seeing a few more messages in chat, but until then, we're just kind of keep the show going, and we'll do an interaction portion here soon. Um, are there any other cards in these two packs that you want to touch on?
Um, I think another was just the Ember Root Lizard.
Yeah.
Um, I would think that'd be like a staple for Lulu decks, but I think even in the Lulus that we saw, like it wasn't really used in those too much. Um,
Mhm.
because it seems like Ember's only good if you're sparking from Lulu onto the Ember Root, but all the Lulu decks seem to want to use Bolster to get the spark on just other units, so that really made like Ember Root difficult to use in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know where I sit with Ember Root. Like, I think in Lulu it definitely has some potential. I'm worried that it won't be anywhere else. We'll have to see where status
Hmm.
generation for packs. We're only halfway through the cycle. Could certainly be a lot more status stuff coming. So, we'll
Right.
see. Um, and then I think last thing I want to touch on before we Lulu
Yeah.
herself, we expected, or at least I should say, I expected a lot of Lulu in SB5, and there wasn't many. There's a few.
Yeah, I
Um,
think there were only three. And yeah, I expected it to be like wild, like everyone running Lulu, but that didn't happen.
it's weird. Like I figured, in most card games, when a new set comes out, aggro strategies are usually the dominant force at first because they're easier to figure out and build. You should just throw the good stuff in the deck and do the thing, and they're usually much stronger. Whereas like slower control decks find their footing later on in the set. And I thought for sure Lulu was going to be huge at the beginning, and turns out Orc was the one. Um, Personally, I think this is just kind of indicative of kind of where the mindset of Ashes players is shuffle bus, and the fact that this was the last shuffle bus before the championship, and most of the good players had already won their qualifier position, so it wasn't, and it's a brand new set just came. So I don't think a lot of people were too hyper focused on figuring out what's like taking the absolute best aggro deck in the game to like stomp. I think it was more just like, hey, a new set came out. I want to play some stuff and have fun. Um,
Hmm.
and I'll save all that kind of super competitive energy, like championship. Um,
Right.
Not
Yeah,
to
I think
say
people just
the
I think
people
people just
who,
like saw Auric and were like, "Oh, this just seems cool. It's
yeah,
different than everything else, so I just want to like try building that." Where like Lulu's good, but it's just a lot more of the same, like of aggro style.
yeah, and it's also a lot of nature and kind of tired of nature.
Hmm.
Yeah, so all right, we've gone over SB5 and Lulu and Orc. That was our kind of main topic. Um, we do have one more thing to talk about before, and that got spoilers. Let me see if I can. Actually, I didn't plan for this, but I kind of want to bring.
Yeah, I just brought them up real quick too.
Yeah,
Um, so I'll read through Demona and then we can go over our thoughts with how we think she'll like impact the meta. Obviously, we haven't seen the rest of her cards, so we can just do like a quick like hot take of like what we think she can do. So Demona is a 7 battlefield, 16 health, 3 spell board unit with promote, main action, exhaust, 2 basic. Remove an exhausted ally you control from play. If you do, place an Empyrean Mount Conjuration onto your battlefield and place that ally face down underneath that unit. The Empyrean Mount uh, is a 3/3 unit Battle Master. When declared as an attacker, you may choose a target unit. An opponent controls that unit must block it if able, and it just has the standard dismount ability. Rayward Knight is a 3 basic unit, 3 attack, 3 life, 3 recover. On ability 2 arms, when it comes into play, you can search your discard pile for an ally and shuffle it into your draw pile. Then charge is a side action to take an attack action targeting a unit. Um, so that was a bit of a mouthful. Sorry.
All right, I
Um,
actually I do have them pulled up on this now, so we can go
okay,
them real quick.
perfect.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, Demona. He's back, and he's got some similar things going on. Rayward Knight looks pretty familiar. Same stat line, same cost. Um, but this ability is really like, for one, and you'll see this as a bit of a theme with Demona, is like she's got a lot of anti potential. Um,
Hmm.
this She has so many basic costs built into her ally and her ability.
Yeah, the 5 basic just from the knight and her ability alone just says like it's going to be really hard to mill her.
Yeah, for sure. And the charge on this is, it's crazy. Like, you take the attack action, targeting a unit, um, just as a side, so we can just like come in and immediately attack something. Um, I believe this does exhaust Rearward Knight. It is taking an
Yeah, it
attack
would.
action,
Yeah,
but
you take an attack with it, so it does exhaust.
yeah. But just to have an ally that this big that can just come in and immediately smack, and then now that it's exhausted, Ona can
Yeah.
turn it
Yeah, if it's
into
not dealt
another
with,
3/3.
it'll get promoted.
Yep.
I th- I think good cards that Demona's going to want to um have in her deck. One would be Light Swordsman because it's 1 cost side action, and then you can swing with it. And with the quick strike on it, it's going to probably kill and survive whatever blocks against it. And then just like with the Rayward Knight, if they don't deal with it on the next turn, then you can promote the Light Swordsman and get out your Empyrean Mount.
That's, 3 dice for a 2/1 quick attack unit, does its thing, and then also comes in as a 3/3. um, it's
That's just
really,
crazy.
really good. And the Battle
Hmm.
Master ability on this is so cool because it's like a,
It's like a stock that forces a
yeah,
counter,
yeah. You
counter and
force a unit to
exhaust.
fight you. It's strong, guys.
Hmm.
Lower health, small spell board. The 7/3 stat line we a lot with kind of Phoenix Born to have powerful ability and card. Do pay for it a little bit by not being quite as flexible. But with Demona's ability to, or Rayward Knight's ability to couple allies back in the deck, you can kind of bit more the 3 spell board does.
Hmm.
Having to run more allies, he doesn't run out of them as much. So yeah, he's really, artwork is. And then we have
Yeah,
our
this design looks
first,
really cool.
yeah, for sure. And then we have our first ever new Phoenix Born to Ashes Reborn. Because remember, Demona, Lulu, and Orrick, they were all part of the game previously and redesigned. Jericho was part of the game previously. This is the first all new Phoenix Born. Uh, and Hope is a Z. Um, so right off the bat, 6 battlefield, 5 spell board. So good. Like, that's so
Yeah,
good. And
those are
17
great
health
stats.
is average, but it's not low.
Hmm.
So her stat line's incredible. Her ability is a side action exhaust, um, one basic, and you choose a conjuration you control with a life value of one. Put a copy of it on your battlefield, and at the end of the turn, destroy it. That copy. Um, so what you can do with this, you can summon an extra copy of a Shadow Spirit, swing for two. It's gonna die anyway at the turn, but you get to swing. You can do damage, lower a die. So for one basic, that's really. You can summon a Salamander Monk. You get the 1/1 Salamander Monk. Swing for one, pressure guard, maybe attack a Raptor Hatchling, and then at the end of the round, it dies, and you get a Monk Spirit.
That's a
um,
crazy value.
yeah, and so there's a lot of potential here. Uh, some people were talking about the Shadowhound, 3/1 concealed.
Hmm.
Basically, have like a surgical strike unit, then three at something, and since Shadowhound is concealed, it's not likely to get killed before you're able to duplicate it.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of things that Hope's going to be able to do just to like again, just like play the game differently,
Yeah,
which is really exciting.
and then Void Pulse is her signature. It's just an insane card. It's so you pay one basic and it's a reaction spell, and you play it after you declare attackers. You deal damage to a target unit, and opponent controls equal to the number of attacking units. Already very good. You swing with 3 units, and you play this. It's like a cheaper crescendo that kills a bear. You don't have ace card for it. You don't have to damage yourself for it. You just kill a
Just
bear.
pay any die,
Yep, any one die. Uh,
and then
and then if it destroys that unit after it's destroyed, you draw 2 cards and then change 2 dice in target's player's active pool, not down one, but to a side of your choice. Just
that card is insane.
crazy value. Like you're talking like I mean it is dependent on your battlefield. You do have to
Hmm.
kind of set up the situations where you can use it. But with Hope's ability as well, it's always you always have an extra attacker on deck. You know, so that first damage is pretty much always free, or I should say the second one. But yeah, just one die for even if it deals one damage. Sometimes that's going to be well worth it, just to kill a blocker, swing with something, uh, draw 2 cards and change the dice. Like that's good value. Anything beyond that is gets.
Yeah, that is an insane unique ability. So it's definitely something you're going to have to remember and like be wary of when playing against Hope.
Sure. So yeah, those are the spoilers we got. And very excited for us to see the rest of those decks. Illusion and Mind, 2 colors that I've been playing lately, and excited to
Hmm.
see where the rest of it goes. So, all right, that out of the way, we're coming up on we're over an hour now. But we're gonna do a quick Q&A session. Those of you who have been in the chat and patiently waiting and talking, we see you. I see everything you've been saying. Schmendrix, Vizcoda, uh, Jason Lindley, Professional Dork. Thank you guys for tuning in, watching the stream, and at this point, I think we're gonna open this up to community questions. Um, I guess the topic, if you want to follow a topic, is what you think about Lulu and Orrick, what your feedback is on those cards, and what meta and the Shuffle Bus season 5, and maybe going into 6, like expect to see, or just whatever you want to ask. It's kind of whatever you want. So feel free to post your questions in So I saw early we were talking about Snake. Hendrix said, "Feel like Illusion and Divine can be powerful against Snake. Exhaustion and cheap read with fade away. Yeah, you can fade away the snake. You can
Yeah, it can work.
reflections in the water. Someone mentioned that in chat. Like, it's not a permanent solution, but it does shut down for its.
Yeah, I think fadeaway can be good actually, because if you're removing it constantly round over round, the snake's probably not getting too big. So even like people say the downside with fadeaway is that they still get to use the unit, but with snakes, since like it only had that round to build up, it's probably um not going to get too huge. So even if it got value, it's not going to be too big. And then next round they get start off again with just a 0-4,
Yeah,
just a 0-4. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's a good point. All right, we do have our first question, and this is a big one. It's Team Demona or Team Hope? Uh, Bill, what do you think?
ooh, that's gonna be tough. I think just with how they're set up right now, Demona looks more my style. Just um getting out some big units and controlling where blocking goes. Because I could also see it like going in with a Baron Mindfog out, and it really like messes with like how they can block everything. So I think that that's going to be really fun to play again, to play with.
Yeah, I think Demona is going to be strong too. Uh, I am going to say Team Hope though. I think she. I mean, just on paper, she looks like very very strong, very flexible abilities. Like Demona's stuff is flexible in terms of dice colors, but it's still very expensive. Spending
Hmm.
5 dice a turn, two things. So I could see maybe situations where Demona doesn't have quantity of dice to. Whereas Hope's stuff is so cheap, so much potential value, very explosive. You have to set it up correctly. Um, and
Yeah,
so I'm gonna say Team Hope. I'm really excited to play with. Plus, or play with them rather. Sorry, they them pronoun for Hope.
I
Um,
think the combo with Salamander Monk too is just going to put Hope like really above on efficiency. Like Salamander Monk is already great on efficiency because it's a one die, it gives you 2 units, and then Hope spending just a basic gives you another 2 units from Salamander Monk. It dies that turn, and then you get the spirit out. So
yeah,
that's going to be seen a lot with Hope.
for sure. Anything else in the chats? Oh, Charlotte's here. Hi, Charlotte. Very excited for both Team Dope. They are
Love it.
together Team Dope. I love that.
That's awesome.
You always make me laugh, Charlotte. You're the best. I think every day I get a good laugh out of you, off of you from Discord, random stuff. Glad you're here and tuning in. Um, yeah, I think we're gonna wrap up here in a few minutes. I've been going for an hour and 13 minutes strong now. So if anyone has
Wow.
anything else and wants to throw in the chat, now is the time. I think we covered quite a bit. I think next time, I don't know if we'll do it next episode. I think next episode probably be talking about the championship.
Yeah, we'll probably go over that and see where the lists from season 6, since they'll be posted by the time we get it to recording again. So
But
that'll be a
we'll
big
have the
topic.
first world championship by the time. Like we'll have the first world champion. Sorry,
Hmm.
happens. You're playing, I assume.
Yeah, still finalizing a list, but I got a little over 24 hours maybe
Yeah, yeah,
to figure that out.
yeah. I think you do. Yeah, I got my list submitted. You know, I'm not expecting to do like incredible or anything. I do feel very strong about my list this time around. I feel like I'm not making mistakes I made the last three times. um, and yeah, I know there's going to be a few really strong competitors that aren't going to make it. Um, or I don't know. Is Jason? Are you still here? I don't remember if you're playing. I think you're not playing. If I'm not mistaken. Possible German on the Discord. He's been in several top cuts and done really well in Swiss and several shuffle busts. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. I think a little bit too. Oh, professional dork is also Jason. Sorry, sorry, I wasn't talking about you. I apologize. It was a different Jason. Jason with a Y. I don't know how you spell your name. Do you have anything else you wanted to hit on before we wrap it up?
Um, no, I think we hit everything we wanted to go for this episode. Um, so yeah, I think that was a good one.
Yeah, this is a good first try, and as far as I could tell, no technical difficulties. So pretty cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and I think we'll call it here. Just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. Thank you for coming to YouTube channel as well. I will be posting more content in the future. We'll definitely be doing first five live. Um, and yeah, if you are not a part of the Ashes Discord, please do join. The community is awesome. We love to have you. Lots of veterans here. Uh, Ashes. Lots of different ways that you can play tabletop simulator or Ash Techie or even webcam. And we have tons of community events going on. First five Fridays. I and Possible Journey run open to players of all experience levels. Want to learn to play. It's a great start. And be sure to tune in to Shuffle Bus Championship this weekend. And I guess with that, I don't know. You got anything else?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything there. Awesome.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Phil, for
Yeah.
joining me. And thanks everyone for tuning in and First Five Podcast. Have a
See
good
ya.
one. Okay, I've ended.
Okay.